I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and today you and me are going to test this, the new Mini Aceman. The Aceman is effectively a stand-in for a 5-door electric Mini Cooper, which you can't get. As you can see, the Aceman wears a bit of cursory cladding so that Mini can claim it's a small SUV, but really, this is a 5-door hot hatch, and it is one of the best hot hatch releases in recent memory. I think the Aceman has been chronically underrated so far, and in today's video, I'm going to show you the brilliance of this car, but I'm also going to point out what the Aceman doesn't get right, which is important because it's not exactly cheap. $67,000 drive away for the Aceman SE next to me, finished in beautiful indigo sunset. That's a pretty fancy Model Y in terms of pricing for a 4-meter long vehicle. Could it possibly be worth it? We're going to explore, but first, hit subscribe. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by Budget Direct. Moving around the back of the Aceman now, I'm a fan of the styling. For me, the new Gen 3-door Coopers don't look quite right from the rear 3/4, but I think the designers nailed the Aceman. It has this miniature yet chunky appearance, which really suits what this car is trying to do. Cool tail lights. This is an absolutely banging color, indigo sunset. I'd probably go that, although you can get green, but only over a blue interior right now. That's a bit weird. I'd probably remove the Aceman S lettering and just let it look clean with the Mini badge. That's just me. Do you like the styling? Let me know down below. Now, even at 67 drive away, only a manual tailgate, but not a problem really, because it is small and very light, gets out of your way and reveals a 300-litre boot. So Volkswagen Polo sized, and the whole vehicle is Polo sized. So that's fine. It's quite deep. And under the floor, you've got a little bit of extra storage. We've got a Type 2 to Type 2 charging cable in there, sturdy cargo cover. And of course, you can flip down those rear seats if you want more luggage space. Closing the tailgate is a doddle. As I mentioned, the Aceman is effectively Mini's 5-door electric small option. It slots in beneath the Countryman, which is quite a lot larger than this car and also a bit more expensive than the Aceman if you want an electric Countryman. However, if you want a petrol small mini SUV, you will have to go for the Countryman, which is also available with combustion. Aceman is electric only. There was a lower power, smaller battery version briefly available in Australia, which is already on run out at $51,990 drive away, which I think is a decent deal given how good this car is to drive. Stepping up to the S is a lot more expensive because of that run out effect. This one at 67 drive away is not going to be great value if you're comparing it against something like a Tesla Model Y, but taken as its own product, a quite premium, quite sophisticated little electric runabout, then maybe there's something there. So what are we dealing with here? This car shares its platform with the 3-door electric Mini, built in China, just like that car, on a joint venture platform between BMW and Great Wall. Whoa, I know, I hear you thinking that means this must be rubbish. Well, no, that platform has clearly had unbelievably extensive customization by BMW Group, because this thing drives like a Mini and not like a Great Wall. If no one told you about the Chinese joint venture, you would never guess, so it's pretty much immaterial in my view. But perhaps this car should be a little cheaper as a result. You can tell us down below in the comments. Anyway, the cabin, as you see here, is just beautifully Mini, from the ombre blue and orange dashboard up here, finished in cloth, continuing into blue cloth on the doors, blue Veskin artificial leather seats with red or orange and blue piping, I should say, exquisite detailing like the cloth strap on the chunky little meaty Mini steering wheel, which I dislike in BMW, but don't mind in a Mini. To this circular display here, it is so distinctive. And for some people, this might be too retro or too twee, but for me, I see the fun side of the car. I love the fact there's still classic Mini toggles for your direction selector, drive modes, and starting up the car. It's just fun to do every time, isn't it? In terms of the tech, it's not bad. We've got a little plastic head-up display that works fine for your speed and seeing your next navigation direction and music track. And then here in the center, the circular screen works okay. It could probably be a little bit snappier, but it's fun that it's got some customizable themes, so you can make it look like a vintage Mini if you want. And all of the themes are accompanied by a sound effect, including the go-kart mode. Woohoo, okay. Sure, why not? You can turn those sounds off. Point is, this car leans pretty far into trying to be fun. You do have wireless Apple CarPlay and wireless Android Auto, and the standard Harman Kardon system in the Aceman S sounds fantastic. The acoustics of this cabin are excellent. I wish the seats had cooling. The driver does get electric adjustment, however, and there's heating, plus a funny little armrest here. So the ergonomics are actually decent. I also wish the glass roof opened. Unfortunately, it's fixed, but it has an excellent sun blind, which keeps all the light and the heat out. So that gets points with me. Even practicality is okay, with a little storage box down here, big cup holders, wireless charging. You can get a bottle in the doors, which is unexpected in a little car like this. So all in all, I like the interior quite a bit. I would love to see a cognac seat option get added in, however. All right, let's check out row 2. The reason I say I wish for a cognac interior is that as of now, production of the Aceman S is only happening with this dark blue Vescan interior, which works well with some colors, including the indigo on this car, or there's a really nice orange too. But Mini have recently added British Racing Green to Aceman production, but green over blue doesn't work, so expansion of the interior choices is necessary to keep this car looking good in all colors, in my opinion. Anyway, let's talk about the back seat. This seat is in my driving position. I'm 6 foot or 183 centimeters, and you can see that even though the Aceman is only 4 meters long, it's polo sized, the packaging is better than you'd expect. I've got a bit of leg room, I've got toe room, I've even got headroom, even with the fitment, standard fitment of the sunroof on this car. In fact, there's no cost options at all. Everything you see here is exactly what you get. What you don't get is an armrest in the center. That's pretty common for cars that are this small now. At least some of the door is finished in soft material. You do get a cup holder. You do get USB ports back here. No air vents of your own. The air conditioning in this car is decent, so you'll just have to get the people up front to turn it off. Both front seats do have a seat back pocket, however. In terms of overall comfort, look, it's not great, it's not terrible. I think very few people will purchase an Aceman to travel with 4 people. For me, I think this is a car for singles, couples. Maybe you've got a dog, maybe you've got very small children. If you want more space, just buy a Mini Countryman. All right, let's take the Aceman for a drive. It straight away kind of scrabbles for grip from the Michelin e-Primacy tyres that aren't super sticky, and plays the Mini sound through the speakers as you accelerate hard. Now, that sound fades away into nothingness when you just drive the car moderately. It's only when you're hard on the throttle that it makes that noise, and you can easily turn it off if it's something that you don't like. For me, I kind of think the way Mini has configured it is fine, so I just leave it on. Gives you, I guess, a little bit of excitement when you're driving the thing hard, though if your stereo's turned up, you don't really hear it at all. Now, the Aceman is really brilliant to drive, but it's an acquired taste, and certainly not everybody is going to like the dynamics of this car, and I'm going to explain why. But first of all, I'm going to let you know a little bit about what's happening under the skin. Now, you can't get a 5-door electric Mini. The Aceman is basically the stand-in for that product. And frankly, I actually think Mini's been pretty smart about that, because it kind of has a tiny bit of SUV styling, but it still rides low. It feels much more like a hot hatch than any kind of crossover or SUV, but it's going to appeal to more people, so probably a smart play there. The SE, which I'm driving now, is powerful. 160 kilowatts of power, 330 Newton meters of torque, but it's that kind of really good amount of power where it feels peppy and it feels raring to go all the time, but it's not sort of license endangering speed. Now, this car weighs about 1,700 kilos, which is pretty heavy for a small car, but you would be so hard pressed to determine that weight from behind the wheel. I'm not kidding when I tell you that the Aceman handles like a car that weighs 1,200 or 1,300 kilos. It is incredibly well engineered from a suspension and steering perspective to make it behave the way that it does. But 160 kilowatts going into 1,700 kilos, that's what I mean by not exactly license endangering, but certainly enough power to have plenty of fun. It's all going through the front wheels. There's no all-wheel drive Aceman, and that is completely fine, because this car has classic front drive hot hatch dynamics, and on a tight, twisty, uneven country road like this, it is thrilling because as a driver, you have a lot to do. In a way, it feels almost combustion in that sense. Of course, we don't have a transmission, we don't have a manual in this car. A petrol manual Aceman would be nice, but this car's persona is so wrapped up in Mini executing a truly fun to drive, fully electric 5-door product. And I have never, while driving this car, gone, you know what, I wish this was petrol. And I'm a guy that also owns a petrol car. I'm quite powertrain agnostic, but this car is a beautifully executed EV. Now, I mentioned the tyres up front, Michelin e-Primacy tyres, not Conti Sports, not Michelin Pilot Sports. So there's not an overabundance of grip here. And again, that's kind of what I want from a bit more of a raw hot hatch like this, because it does start to spin up the tires if you just lash on 100% throttle out of corners. So it teaches you to be a bit patient with your right boot down here, and it teaches you to lean into the chassis and adjust the angle using a bit of lift-off oversteer. And my goodness, does the Aceman provide lift-off oversteer. And with ESC on, or alternatively an ESC Sport, which is also an option, it is absolutely happy to dance down the road, put its back out in a safe and predictable way. And again, what that's doing is not huge, big rear-wheel drive drifting, of course, but it's just allowing you to bring the rear end into play in order to correct your line, get the car pointing straight so you can get on the power quicker, which brings me conveniently along to ride quality. And this is going to be the part of the Aceman that doesn't agree with everyone, because it has a very, very focused, extremely reactive damping setup. Now, in actual fact, the core damping of the car and the compliance is actually decent, because when I see a smooth piece of road, a bit like the surface I'm kind of on at this very point in time, the Aceman settles down. So it doesn't have a constantly fidgeting suspension on smooth roads. So on the highway, on a smoothish piece of road that looks smooth enough, it actually is settled, it's not annoying. However, when there are bumps in the road, you definitely feel them. Not in a head toss or a torso toss sensation, because the car actually damps it well. It's just extremely reactive damping. The car really reads the road, and it tells you what's happening on the surface beneath you more than really almost any other car that I can think of on sale. Now, some people might find that a bit tiring, particularly if you commute on really bumpy roads. This car probably won't be for you. Some other comments: love the brake tuning. A bit like the BMW EVs, you've got low, medium and high regen in drive selection or adaptive, or you can go into B mode for much stronger regen. I like drive and low, that feels natural to me, particularly on a road like this one. Good country road. Refinement, actually not as bad as you might expect. There's definitely some road noise. It's definitely a bit of coarse chip noise from this road, but it's not too bad, and the Harman Kardon stereo drowns it out and sounds brilliant. Visibility, really good. That classic deep mini view forward over the haunches there, decent mirrors, I can see behind me okay, and I've got a 360-degree camera. Shout out to the safety features. This car's got them, but they're sensitively tuned. The lane departure is subtle, and you can turn it off if even that's too much. There is no speed warning in this car for Australia. It does have it in Europe, but BMW Group actually cares enough to realize that Australian law doesn't require a binging bonging speed warning system, and they turn it off for our market. So kudos BMW and Mini. The adaptive cruise works well, the blind spot monitoring works well. Really, you don't notice the safety systems because they just work properly, which is exactly how it should be. So that's another way in which the Aceman is surprisingly sophisticated dynamically. Let's chat about the running costs for the Aceman. And as you'd expect, for a small and relatively light EV, they're pretty manageable. Firstly, starting with range and charging. So of course, we've got your Type 2 and your CCS charging capacity for this car. The DC peak of 95 kilowatts isn't great, but because this thing only has a 49 kilowatt hour usable battery, you're not having to spend very long at charges at all. And I suspect many people that go for this, it'll be a second car with the capacity to charge at home. If you don't have that luxury, you will have to think about topping this thing up relatively frequently. Why is that? Real world range for me, 351 kilometers. Totally fine for a runabout, bit of a stretch if you're the kind of person that needs to do a lot of road trips. My efficiency, about 14 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers on my combined test, which is decent. you could probably do better than me because there was a bit of time driving this like a fairly frenetic Mini that it is. Mini will sell you a service inclusive package, which you can buy up front with the car, relatively reasonably priced. There's 4 and 6 year options. Pricing's on screen here. Warranty for the vehicle, 5 years with unlimited kilometers. So what's my final verdict on the new Mini Aceman? Personally, I love this car, but that's the key word, personally. As a road tester, I need to look at the positives and negatives of this vehicle, and I understand that its compromises mean that it's not going to be for everyone. 350 kilometers of range in the real world is not going to be sufficient for every use case, especially for road trippers, combined with this car's relatively modest peak charging speed. The reactive and communicative ride quality is certainly an acquired taste, but it's a taste that I've acquired for a hot hatch in my life. And I think for people who are fortunate enough to park the Aceman in a garage alongside perhaps a family station wagon or SUV, this would make an unbelievably fun second car, and one where it's actually worth dealing with the short range to get it out to some amazing country roads once in a while to see the brilliance under the skin. Yes, it's expensive, but Mini's engineering effort here is commendable, and I can actually see an argument of this thing being worth $67,000 drive away, as crazy as that sounds. I'm very keen to know your opinion though. Please let me know down below this video in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.